Welcome to Gripping Tales. Are you ready for today's video? It starts now.
Lighthouses are supposed to be beacons of safety, guiding ships away from danger, warning sailors of treacherous coastlines. But the men and women who kept these lights burning often found themselves isolated for weeks or months at a time, miles from civilization, surrounded by nothing but ocean and darkness. And sometimes, in that isolation, they experienced things that can't be easily explained. What I'm about to share with you are 5 true accounts from lighthouse keepers and visitors who encountered something deeply disturbing. These aren't old sailor legends or folklore. These are documented incidents, some investigated by authorities, others covered up and forgotten. After hearing these stories, you might understand why so many lighthouses remain abandoned, and why the few that still operate rarely keep keepers anymore. The Flannan Isles disappearance. This is probably the most famous lighthouse mystery in history, and for good reason. In December 1900, 3 experienced lighthouse keepers vanished from the Flannan Isles lighthouse off the coast of Scotland. What makes this case truly disturbing isn't just that they disappeared, it's the evidence of what might have happened in their final moments. The 3 men were James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. They were stationed at one of the most remote lighthouses in the British Isles, on an uninhabited island 20 miles west of the Outer Hebrides. On December 15th, a passing ship noted that the lighthouse wasn't operating. This was highly unusual. Lighthouse keepers took their duties seriously, and the light going out could mean disaster for ships in the area. A relief vessel was sent to investigate, but bad weather delayed them until December 26th. When they finally reached the island, they found something deeply unsettling. The lighthouse was completely deserted. The entrance gate and main door were closed but unlocked. Inside, the kitchen table was set for a meal that had never been eaten. One chair was overturned. The clock had stopped. But here's where it gets strange. 2 of the 3 oilskin coats, the heavy weather gear keepers wore in storms, were missing from their hooks. The 3rd coat was still there. This suggested that 2 men had gone outside in bad weather, while one had gone out without protection. The keeper who investigated, a man named Joseph Moore, found the lighthouse log. The final entries were disturbing. On December 12th, Thomas Marshall wrote that there had been a severe storm, worse than anything he'd seen in his 20 years of keeping lights. He noted that James Ducat had been very quiet, and Donald MacArthur had been crying. December 13th, Marshall wrote that the storm was still raging. He said all 3 of them had been praying. The final entry, December 15th, simply said, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." But here's the problem. There was no storm in that area between December 12th and 15th. Other ships, weather stations, and nearby islands all reported calm seas. Whatever these men experienced, it wasn't a natural storm. The official investigation concluded the men must have been swept away by a freak wave while securing equipment during unexpected rough weather. But this explanation has never satisfied anyone who looks closely at the evidence. The overturned chair suggests a sudden panic. The missing coats suggest 2 men rushed outside, possibly to help the 3rd, who went out without weather gear. But why would an experienced keeper go outside in dangerous conditions without his coat? What could make 3 grown men, all veterans of lighthouse work, so frightened that one entry mentions them crying and praying? And then there's the log entry about a storm that never happened. Was Marshall lying? Hallucinating? Or did they experience something else entirely? Something they interpreted as a storm, but wasn't natural weather at all? The island where the lighthouse stands has a dark history. Local legends spoke of strange occurrences there long before the lighthouse was built. Fishermen avoided it. The few who visited reported hearing voices on the wind and seeing lights moving across the cliffs where no light should be. Over a century later, the mystery remains unsolved. The lighthouse still operates, but it's been automated since 1971. No keeper has been permanently stationed there since the disappearance. And occasionally, maintenance workers who visit the island report feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, hearing footsteps in the tower when they're alone, or finding doors they locked standing open. 3 men walked into that lighthouse in November 1900. By December 15th, they were gone. No bodies were ever found. No evidence of foul play was discovered. They simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only a cryptic log entry and more questions than answers. The Flannan Isles mystery has puzzled investigators for over a century, but isolated disappearances aren't the only thing lighthouse keepers have to fear. Sometimes, the danger comes from what enters the lighthouse with you. The Smalls Lighthouse incident in 1801, two lighthouse keepers, Thomas Howell and Thomas Griffith, were stationed together at the Smalls Lighthouse, a stone tower built on a rocky outcrop 20 miles off the coast of Wales. They were supposed to remain there for their usual rotation, relieved after a few weeks, but relief didn't come on time. Bad weather prevented the supply boat from reaching them. Days turned into weeks, and during that extended isolation, one of them died. Thomas Griffith fell ill suddenly. He complained of severe stomach pains and a high fever. Within 2 days, he was dead. Thomas Howell was now alone on a tiny platform in the middle of the ocean with a corpse. In normal circumstances, Howell would have signaled for help and waited for the relief boat. But here's where the situation became a nightmare. Howell and Griffith had argued frequently during their time together. They didn't like each other. Their relationship was tense and hostile. Howell became terrified that when the relief boat finally arrived, he would be accused of murdering Griffith. After all, they were alone on the lighthouse. There were no witnesses. Who would believe that Griffith died of natural causes? So Howell made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He couldn't dispose of the body at sea because that would look even more suspicious. He had to keep it. He had to preserve it as evidence that he hadn't committed murder. He constructed a makeshift coffin from spare wood and placed Griffith's body inside. But the lighthouse had no space for storage, and the smell of decomposition would soon become unbearable inside the confined living quarters. Howell lashed the coffin to the outside of the lighthouse platform, securing it to the railing where it would be visible to any passing ship. For weeks, Thomas Howell lived alone in that lighthouse, with his dead companion's coffin strapped to the exterior. Every time he went outside to trim the lamp or make repairs, he had to walk past it. Every night he could hear the coffin creaking and shifting in the wind. But it got worse. A storm hit. The waves were massive, crashing against the lighthouse with tremendous force. During one particularly violent wave, the coffin was damaged. Part of the lid broke away. Thomas Griffith's arm came free and hung out of the broken coffin, swaying in the wind. For days, Howell watched that arm move. From inside the lighthouse, through the windows, he could see it waving, almost as if Griffith was beckoning to him, or trying to signal for help, or accusing him. Howell tried to repair the coffin, but every time he approached it, the wind and spray made it too dangerous. The arm remained outside, visible through every window, moving constantly. He stopped sleeping. When he closed his eyes, he could still see it. When he opened them, it was there, swaying back and forth. Finally, after nearly 4 weeks of this horror, the relief boat arrived. The crew found Thomas Howell in a state of complete psychological collapse. His hair had turned white. He was incoherent, babbling about the arm, about being watched, about hearing Griffith's voice in the wind. When the crew examined Griffith's body, they confirmed he had died of natural causes, likely a ruptured appendix or similar illness. Howell was not charged with any crime, but he never recovered mentally. The incident led to a new rule: never station fewer than 3 keepers at a lighthouse. If one died, there would still be 2 witnesses to confirm the cause of death. This rule remained in effect for over a century. The Smalls Lighthouse still stands. It's automated now, like most lighthouses. But the story of Thomas Howell and the swaying arm became legendary among lighthouse keepers. It represented their worst fear, not just the isolation, not just the danger of the sea, but the psychological horror of being trapped with death, unable to escape, slowly losing your mind as the days stretched on with no rescue in sight. Howell lived for many more years after the incident, but according to those who knew him, he was never quite right again. He would often stare at his own arm, flexing his fingers, as if reassuring himself that he was still alive and not the one in the coffin. Thomas Howell's ordeal shows what isolation can do to the human mind. But some lighthouse keepers reported experiences that can't be explained by loneliness or psychological stress alone. Sometimes they encountered things that shouldn't exist. The Eilean Mor Watchers. This story takes place in the 1990s. Long after the famous Flannan Isles disappearance. A team of researchers and historians decided to visit Eilean Mor, the island where those 3 keepers vanished, to investigate the mystery and document the lighthouse for a historical project. The team consisted of 4 people: Dr. Sarah Chen, a historian specializing in maritime history; Mark Davidson, a photographer; Emma Wilson, a researcher; and their guide, a Scottish sailor named Robert MacLeod, who knew the waters around the Hebrides. They arrived at the island on a clear August morning. The lighthouse had been automated for decades, but the building was still maintained. The plan was to spend 3 days on the island, photographing the lighthouse, searching for any overlooked evidence, and camping near the structure. The first day was uneventful. They explored the lighthouse, took photographs, and set up their camp. Emma noted in her journal that the island felt oppressive and unwelcoming, but she attributed this to knowing the dark history of the place. On the second night, things changed. Around 2 a.m., Sarah woke up to the sound of footsteps. Heavy boots on stone, circling the lighthouse. She assumed it was one of her colleagues and went back to sleep. But at breakfast, when she mentioned it, everyone denied being outside during the night. That afternoon, while photographing the cliffs, Mark saw something that made him freeze. Standing on a rocky outcrop about 50 yards away were 3 men in old-fashioned clothing, dark wool coats and caps, the kind lighthouse keepers would have worn a century ago. Mark called out to them, but they didn't respond. They just stood there, perfectly still, facing the lighthouse. He raised his camera to photograph them, but when he looked through the viewfinder, the men were gone, just gone. He looked up from the camera, and there was nothing on the outcrop but bare rock. That evening, Robert insisted they should leave first thing in the morning. He seemed genuinely frightened, though he wouldn't explain why. The others convinced him to stay 1 more night as planned. At midnight, Emma was awakened by voices. Male voices, speaking in what sounded like Scottish Gaelic. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, almost panicked. She sat up in her tent and listened. The voices were coming from inside the lighthouse. She woke the others, and all 4 of them approached the lighthouse door. The voices were clearer now, definitely coming from inside the tower. Robert translated some of what he could hear. "The storm. It's not stopping. God help us." Dr. Chen pushed open the door. The voices stopped immediately. They searched the entire lighthouse with flashlights. Every room, every level, up to the light chamber at the top. There was no one there. No sign that anyone had been inside. The dust on the stairs showed only their own footprints from earlier that day. But when they returned to the ground floor, they noticed something that made Sarah's blood run cold. In the dust on the floor, near the kitchen area, were 3 sets of boot prints that hadn't been there before. Old-fashioned boots, much larger than modern footwear. And the prints didn't lead anywhere. They simply appeared in the middle of the room, as if 3 men had materialized there, stood for a moment, and then vanished. The team left the island at first light, cutting their research trip short by a day. They didn't tell anyone what had happened. Who would believe them? But 2 weeks later, Emma received a package at her office. Inside was a photograph that Mark had taken on the island. He'd been reviewing his shots and found something he'd missed before. The photo was of the lighthouse exterior, taken during the afternoon of their second day. In one of the upper windows, barely visible but unmistakable when you looked closely, were 3 faces. Pale, indistinct but definitely human faces pressed against the glass from the inside. The photograph was time-stamped. Mark had taken it at 3:47 p.m., a time when all 4 team members were outside, nowhere near the lighthouse windows. Dr. Chen still has that photograph. She's never published it or shown it publicly. When asked about the research trip, she simply says it was inconclusive and changes the subject. But she's never returned to Eilean Mor. None of them have. And when other researchers ask for her notes or recommendations about investigating the Flannan Isles mystery, she strongly discourages them from going. Robert, the guide, refuses to take anyone to that island anymore. When pressed, he'll only say, "Some places don't want to be visited. The island remembers what happened there. And it's still happening. Every day. Those men are still trying to understand what took them." The Scottish Isles aren't the only place where lighthouse keepers have reported unexplainable phenomena. Along the American coastline, isolated lights have their own dark histories. And sometimes, the horror comes not from ghosts of the past, but from something much more immediate. The St. Augustine Light Station. In 2008, a night security guard named Marcus Rodriguez was hired to patrol the St. Augustine Lighthouse in Florida. It's one of the oldest brick structures in the United States, built in 1874, and it's been the site of multiple tragedies over the years. The most famous incident occurred in 1873 during the lighthouse's construction. 3 young girls, daughters of the superintendent, were playing in a cart on the construction site when it broke free and rolled into the ocean. All 3 drowned. Their bodies were found days later. Marcus knew about the history. He'd been told the lighthouse was supposedly haunted. But he was a skeptic and the pay was good, so he took the job. His shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and his duties included checking the grounds, the museum areas, and the lighthouse tower itself. For the first 2 weeks, nothing unusual happened. Marcus would walk his route, check the locks, and spend most of the night in the security office watching cameras and reading. Then, on his 3rd week, he started hearing the sounds. Children laughing, faint, distant, but unmistakable, coming from outside the building, near the spot where the girls had drowned over a century ago. At first he thought it might be teenagers trespassing, so he went outside to investigate. The grounds were empty, but the laughter continued, seeming to move around him, first from one direction, then another. He followed the sound to the old keeper's house, and that's when he saw them. 3 small figures, barely visible in the darkness, wearing old-fashioned dresses. They were standing near the water's edge, holding hands. They weren't translucent or glowing like movie ghosts. They looked solid, real, but something about them was wrong. They were too still, too quiet. Marcus called out to them, asking if they were okay, if they needed help. All 3 turned to look at him at exactly the same time. And then they smiled. Marcus said later that those smiles were the most disturbing thing he'd ever seen. They weren't happy or playful smiles. They were knowing, like the girls understood something he didn't, something terrible. Then they started walking toward him. Not running, not floating, just walking at a slow, steady pace, still holding hands. Marcus ran back to the security office and locked the door. He watched the security cameras, but the cameras showed nothing outside. The area near the water was empty. But when he looked through the window with his own eyes, he could see them standing there, just outside the range of the camera, still staring at the building. He called his supervisor, tried to explain what was happening. His supervisor thought he was joking or drunk. Marcus stayed in the office for the rest of his shift, doors locked, refusing to go outside again. The next night he brought a friend with him, someone to verify he wasn't crazy. They saw the girls again, 3 figures in old dresses, this time closer to the lighthouse tower. Marcus's friend saw them too. He grabbed his phone to record video, but when he played it back, the video showed nothing but an empty lawn. But both men saw them with their own eyes, and this time, the girls weren't just standing still. They were beckoning, waving at Marcus and his friend to follow them toward the water. Neither man did. They stayed in the office again, watching through the windows as the figures wandered the grounds, always staying just outside the camera's view, always trying to lead someone toward the spot where they had drowned. Marcus quit 3 days later. His friend never came back to the lighthouse again. The facility hired a new security company, and Marcus heard that they've had trouble keeping guards ever since. The average tenure for a night guard at St. Augustine Lighthouse is less than 2 months. But here's what makes this story even more disturbing. Marcus did some research after he quit. He found historical photographs of the 3 girls who drowned, Eliza, Mary, and Carrie. The figures he saw matched their descriptions perfectly, right down to the dresses they were wearing. In 2015, a paranormal investigation team visited the lighthouse with permission from the Historical Society. They captured audio recordings of children's voices and footsteps when the building was empty. They also recorded something else, a woman's voice speaking clearly on their EVP equipment saying, "Don't follow them, they're not trying to play, they're trying to show you." Show them what? The investigators don't know. But the implication is chilling. Maybe those girls aren't just ghosts reliving their trauma, maybe they're trying to warn people. Or maybe they're trying to bring others into the water with them, to join them in whatever state they exist in now. The St. Augustine Lighthouse still operates and is open to tourists during the day, But the night security guards know better than to investigate strange sounds or follow figures they might see in the darkness. They stay inside, doors locked, and wait for sunrise. The St. Augustine encounters suggest that lighthouses can hold on to the past, replaying tragedies again and again. But our final story is different. This one is recent, documented, and involves something that has no historical explanation whatsoever: the Bass Harbor headlight encounter. This final story is the most recent and, in many ways, the most disturbing because it happened just 3 years ago, in 2023, and was investigated by both local police and the Coast Guard. Bass Harbor Headlight is located in Maine, perched on a rocky cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. It's a popular tourist spot during the day, known for its picturesque setting and beautiful views. But at night, it's isolated and dark. In September 2023, a couple from Boston, I'll call them Tyler and Jenna, decided to camp nearby as part of a New England road trip. They set up their tent in a designated camping area about a quarter-mile from the lighthouse, planning to photograph the sunrise from the cliffs in the morning. Around 1 a.m., Tyler woke up to a sound he couldn't identify, a low humming, almost like machinery, but with an irregular rhythm. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the lighthouse. He unzipped the tent to look outside. The lighthouse light was rotating normally, its beam sweeping across the ocean. But on the cliffs near the lighthouse, there was something else, a faint glow, bluish-white, pulsing slowly. Tyler woke Jenna, and they both watched the light. It seemed to be hovering about 10 feet above the rocks, moving slowly toward the lighthouse tower. As they watched, it changed shape, elongating, then contracting, like something breathing. They grabbed Tyler's camera with its zoom lens and tried to photograph it. Through the lens, they could see more detail. The light wasn't just a glow. There was a structure inside it. Something organic looking, with what appeared to be appendages or tentacles moving within the luminescence. Then it moved toward them. The light drifted away from the lighthouse and began floating across the rocky terrain in their direction. The humming sound grew louder, and both of them felt an intense pressure in their ears, like rapid altitude changes. They ran, grabbed what they could from the tent, and sprinted to their car. As Tyler fumbled with his keys, Jenna looked back and saw that the light had reached their campsite. It hovered over their tent for a moment, then the tent collapsed inward, as if something had crushed it from above. They drove to the nearest town and called the police. The officer who took their report was skeptical but agreed to check the site. When police arrived at the campsite around 3 a.m., they found the tent completely flattened, not torn or damaged, compressed, as if something extremely heavy had pressed down on it evenly from above. But here's what made the police take it seriously. The ground around the tent was burned, not scorched like fire. The grass and soil were crystallized, like they'd been exposed to extreme cold. The entire area within a 15-foot radius of the tent had this same pattern of frost damage, despite it being a mild September night. Tyler's camera was found inside the flattened tent. Most of the photos were corrupted, digital files that wouldn't open or displayed only static. But 3 images survived. The first showed the bluish light over the cliffs. The second showed it closer, and you could make out the strange internal structure Tyler had described. The third image was taken as they were running away. A hasty, blurred shot looking back over Tyler's shoulder. In that final photo, the light is directly over their tent, and within the glow you can see something that doesn't match any known phenomenon. It looks almost biological, curved forms, symmetrical patterns, something that resembles eyes or sensors arranged in a circular pattern. The Coast Guard launched an investigation. They checked for unusual maritime activity, radar anomalies, weather phenomena. They found nothing. No boats in the area, no military exercises, no atmospheric conditions that could explain what Tyler and Jenna saw. A marine biologist who reviewed the photos suggested it might be bioluminescent jellyfish carried by unusual wind patterns. But that doesn't explain the humming sound, the crushed tent, or the crystallized ground. Tyler and Jenna haven't returned to Maine. Tyler posted the photos online briefly, but they were met with predictable skepticism and accusations of photo manipulation. He took them down after a week, exhausted by the harassment. But other people started coming forward. Over the next few months, 3 other witnesses reported seeing similar lights near main lighthouses at Pemaquid Point and Portland Headlight. None were as close as Tyler and Jenna's encounter, but all described the same blue-white glow and the humming sound. The local lighthouse keepers, the few lighthouses that still have human staff, were interviewed. Several admitted, off the record, that they'd seen unusual lights over the years. Lights that didn't behave like boats, planes, or any natural phenomenon. But they'd never reported them because who would believe a story like that? One retired keeper from Portland Headlight told an investigator something chilling. The old-timers used to say the lighthouses attract more than just ships. The light draws things from the ocean, things that are curious about us. Most nights, it's just the sea and the ships. But some nights, other things come to look. The Bass Harbor Headlight still operates. Tourists still visit during the day, taking photos of the scenic views. But the camping area near the lighthouse was quietly closed for safety reasons shortly after the incident. No official explanation was given. Tyler and Jenna's tent was taken as evidence and has never been returned to them. When Tyler filed a request to get it back, he was told it had been, quote, misplaced during the investigation. The photos Tyler took are still examined by researchers and enthusiasts, though most mainstream scientists dismiss them. But Tyler knows what he saw. Jenna knows what they experienced. And the crystallized ground at that campsite suggests that something happened there, something that doesn't fit into our understanding of the natural world. Sometimes lighthouses warn ships away from danger. But maybe, just maybe, they also attract attention from things we're not meant to encounter. Things drawn to the light, curious about the structures we've built on the edge of the ocean. Things that have always been there, just beyond our perception, waiting for the right moment to make themselves known. These 5 stories span over a century, from the mysterious disappearance at Flannan Isles to the recent encounter at Bass Harbor Head. They come from different countries, different eras, but they share a common thread. Isolated people at the edge of the world, experiencing things that can't be easily explained. Lighthouses stand at the boundary between land and sea, between safety and danger, between the known world and the vast, unknowable ocean. Maybe it's not surprising that strange things happen in these liminal spaces. If you've had your own experience at a lighthouse or any isolated location, something you can't explain, something that still haunts you, leave a comment below or submit your story through the link in the description. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, those lighthouse keepers who disappeared or went mad weren't always victims of loneliness or the sea. Sometimes, they saw something out there in the darkness, something that's still there, watching and waiting.
Thanks for watching. Every ending hides the beginning of another tale, and ours is already on its way. Stay tuned, you'll find the next chapter right here, and soon.